Hey, what's up, guys? Lucas Burnley here, sitting with my co-host TJ Schwartz. We're gonna record an episode today.
Mm-hmm. Welcome.
Yeah. You're listening to the Edge and Flow podcast, where we discuss the knife industry, manufacturing, work, life, family, non-balance, all of the things associated to that. Let's start off with some shop updates, man.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Yeah. The good news is we don't have a whole lot of updates in that this last week was very smooth. We have been building a lot of LT5s, and this week really felt like we started to piece together the pattern, the rhythm to involve that knife. So it's like a very uneventful week. The only thing that did happen is all my parts started showing up for our auxiliary coolant tank that we're building for the sile.
Oh boy.
That being the paper band filtration system that we were going to do, but we already kind of talked about that. But those
But
parts
you have
started.
you have parts.
Yeah, it's all here
Like you're
now. So I've
okay.
been starting to kind of get her built. There's a few little tricks there that I got to figure out, but yeah, we'll be getting the sile running on the scales here pretty soon. And yeah, it's been really smooth sailing. It's one of those things where it's like it's going smooth enough that I'm like, it almost makes me more nervous because I'm like, all right, that something's gonna rock the boat here pretty soon. You know what I mean? I know manufacturing enough to know that like complacency is not good.
Yeah.
So it was a good week, but keeping my
Nice.
eye out.
I'm so curious to see how the paper band filter works out. That's like still kind of front of mind for me as I'm moving into the Kihoku. Is just like right now, like I've never really felt the need for two machines. And it's doing this process, like I immediately just see the inefficiencies of having a single machine and having
Yeah.
to like swap over setups and just that alone, like just switching material at scale
Hmm.
is pretty painful.
Yeah. Switching tools over. And also, I found that if you want to increase crash risk of a machine,
Oh
the
yeah.
biggest moment is when you do a setup. You know, you set up new
Oh
tools,
yeah.
you put in a new fixture. Every time you do that is like 10x crash risk. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. You
Whereas
have zero margin for error basically.
if the machine is set up a certain way and you know how it's set up and it's like repeatable, the risk is way lower. You know what I mean? So
It's funny, man. I'm very cautious. So if I switch, I've got two fixtures set up on my table. If I switch between fixtures and I'm only using a couple tools on the new fixture, I'll zero out all of my previous tools.
yeah.
And it's like it's not enough to know that I've just selected the tools that I need for that fixture. I have to like visually verify
Hmm.
that that everything else is like completely offline.
Hmm.
I don't know if everybody does that or if it's like a me thing, but I just don't have the confidence to be like, oh, I'm good. I
Yeah.
didn't miss something.
Yeah. You can't afford a mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, complacency on a CNC machine is bad news. Luckily, CNC machines are pretty safe, like for humans, unless you're
Right.
really being stupid.
Yeah.
Uh,
Moving big
but
stuff.
but for as far as the old checkbook is concerned, they are always waiting to get you. So you just have to be ready for everything.
It's funny the when I was doing before Blade, like figuring out the Kihoku and when I was building the fixture, that one process I'd never tapped on the machine before. Tapping was the first time where I actually started to create like a real consistent like fear, like
Hmm.
PTSD type response because I was trying to figure out how to tap. I kept breaking taps and I would push cycle start and my body would have like a physical response
Yeah.
because I was like it's like anticipating recoil.
Yep.
I'm just waiting for the pop. The pop's not going to hurt me, but my body is like physically like, oh god, here it comes.
Yeah. You're flinching. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just flinching. Um,
Same.
dude, that was bad. Yeah, and that's not like a huge shell mill disintegrating,
You know what's
like
it doesn't apply to you right now, but like I like what John Saunders said, which is that he has a shop with enough guys in it, like 10 employees,
Mm-hmm.
that if he's doing something like that, where he's like, I can't be distracted, I don't want
Yep.
people talking to me, like I need to see, like, listen. He has a vest that he puts on that basically tells people don't talk to me, so that
What?
way, what's that?
That's amazing.
It's just like if you have a busy shop and you're like, I really cannot afford a mistake right now, you could put it on for like 15 minutes or whatever. And then everyone who comes to get you for something is like, wait a minute, I'll wait till he takes the vest off. And that's interesting because that's one of those things where you're typing on the screen, you're doing a work offset, you're like, typing in down to the tenths of a thousandths of an inch. Someone asks you a question, you turn back, that's you get a mistake, you
Mm-hmm.
crash a machine, you know what I mean? So stuff like that is
And he's the
interesting.
boss. So like if you're just like a normal, you know, operator, maybe someone's coming up behind you with a air nozzle and
Yeah, blowing it up your shirt. Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah. And
yeah, I wonder what the neurospicy version of that is because I really like it, but I don't just want to wear like a boring vest.
yeah,
And I would probably wear the vest all
put a
the time.
funny hat on or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. Oh, he's got the
Oh man.
fedora.
That is actually a pretty great way to do that because you're not there's probably a lot of shop owners where people over time you're like don't mess with Steve right now.
Hmm.
Like he's in it. And that probably comes from him like snapping at people or just like having or crashing the machine or but
Yeah,
like not figuring out a nonverbal workaround that is basically like saying like hey like I'm engaged in something else, don't talk to me.
yeah, yeah.
You think it says fuck off on the back?
It should.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so HR.
It was like
There's so many
there
ways.
was a viral thing I saw. It was like a guy running a pressure washer, and somebody had taped a paper to his back, presumably without him knowing, that said like, I'm Steve. I like to talk. I need to finish pressure
Yeah,
washing.
don't
Don't
talk
talk
to
to
me.
me. Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's so good. Yeah, okay, so you're running smooth. You had a drop, right?
Yep. We had a drop last Friday and one coming up this today, which we
Oh
record on
wow.
Friday in 4 hours.
Did you say last week, are you trying to hit a weekly drop?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
How many weeks have you done that?
this is either, I think this is probably the fourth.
Okay. How's it working?
Really good. Honestly, I love it so far, but it's young, so we'll see how it goes.
It's
Because
totally interesting to me with drops, like how people organize them. Um, and it's funny. I haven't spent as much time thinking about drops, like the strategy of drops or the gamification of drops as much as I have in like the like lottery slash like auction space. But I think that there's a lot of room to create variation. So we know that the drop model is like, depending on the brand, is like very, very effective, right? On the custom side, lotteries are super, super effective. So like a long time ago, I came up with the Beep lottery. Like it's a very small thing, but I would be comfortable in saying like it did revolutionize like a portion of our industry and the
Mhm,
way that things were done, right? At
mhm,
shows. That lately, like my brain has kind of been like looking at drops and kind of trying to figure out like, oh, is there a modification that we could make that feels good now? One that I really loved, and it's not that it's necessarily new, but it's the way that he did it, is our good friend Jens Anso. He basically is doing a monthly show, like an online show, but it's a drop, right? He's
mhm,
doing a
mhm.
product drop on the 15th. He basically like I think he calls it drop 15.
Launch
So
15.
or launch, right,
Yeah.
launch 15, right.
Mhm,
Sorry. So you have something with a name, you have something on a schedule. You kind of know what's coming, but you don't know what product's going to be in. I thought that was like a really, really nice adaptation.
So that's sort of what we're doing. We're doing a 24-hour notice for the
Okay,
drop.
nice. You are doing a notification.
Yeah, we're doing email blasts, social media. 24 hours in advance. And we, that here, the part of the thing is, so for a long time, we just did custom orders. That was basically the whole business.
Yeah.
There was two advantages to that. One is that when a YouTuber or something pops off, something goes viral, someone says something on some video, and we have like an influx, or maybe it's a holiday or whatever, you can capture that moment because we don't have a cap. And the way that we throttle it is with lead time. So as I'm watching, I have like kind of a mental map of once we get to certain numbers, I start extending the lead time on the
Yeah.
site. And so it's like you can kind of net like a whole group that kind of came in out of nowhere. Whereas with that's one advantage. The other advantage is that we can really focus on manufacturing. And at the time when it was, especially when it was just me in the shop, I didn't have enough time or bandwidth to like plan unique knives.
Right.
And it was a lot easier for me to have them tell me what to make and I just make it. But we've gotten efficient enough now where the LT5 is being dropped. It is not being custom ordered. And so with the LT5 getting talked about in a video or somebody posts something on social media and we get a wave, if we don't have them in stock, we didn't really have it other than just the mailing list. We didn't have a way to alert people like, hey, come back in a week and there's going to be more. So I realized if we did a weekly drop and we put a little thing on the LT5 page that was like, we're trying to drop these almost every week, join the mailing list, and it'll only be like a week. Because I think a lot of people that come in that don't know our brand might see it and be like, oh, it could be months before they get that in.
Yeah.
And then they just disappear and they don't come back, not realizing it's only 3 days away.
Right.
So that was how we combated that aspect. And then again, on the custom side, how they were just telling us what to make, and that was advantageous. Now that we're more efficient, I want to get more creative juices flowing and do
Yeah.
more unique stuff. And so pretty much every single week, we're dropping materials and finishes that have never been seen before on our knives, pretty much every week.
Dude, I love that.
And so that we're trying to keep customers coming in that would otherwise have just forgot about us and moved on, and then also get uniqueness pumped in there. And it's really worked.
This is a silly question based on who you are, but like, are you like tracking all of your special, you already have that information built in. Are you tracking like your special makeups and like if you're doing a new finish and material combo every week, is that going into a spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Where you're tracking it? Yeah. See that, because of your process, those knives are already in the spreadsheet. You're not having to do it in retrospect, whereas I am trying to learn, like specifically with Cypops is a great example, just tracking what I've actually made over the course of a year and then what's coming down the line. That stuff is incredibly hard for me. It's just not how my brain works. But I'm trying to like force it because just like you, it's a creatively not knowing what to build, what to do next, or like what's unique. I get stuck in that too of like, wait, what have I already done this year? Like, what's the next material? What's the next like shape or thickness? It's too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I without systematizing it, I couldn't do it. Like honestly, we kind of talked about doing signature customs, and we did a few of those back in the day. It was like I didn't find that I had the bandwidth to just convince myself to sit down and like order random materials and like think about how they go together.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in that, but again, it's scaling.
Mm-hmm.
It's less of a problem when the numbers are lower.
Yeah.
Right. Or at this point, I have so much like material and stuff in stock that a lot of times I'm like, well, I'm going to like finish these, like go to the material library and be like, boop, 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 but as the numbers grow now all of a sudden, I don't actually have enough material for the size of the run.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting process. I think this is actually a prime use case for ChatGPT. In a way where it's like you plug in that spreadsheet and you're like, hey, what's like, give me 3 model configurations that aren't in this list. Just an interesting way to like, you're reducing like your decision tree at a point which like every little bit of like not having to decide a high level thing, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. And one of the things I've looked at is like, well, the way I had to set it up to where we weren't constantly like trying to solve problems on the very week of is that in that spreadsheet, we planned 3 weeks in advance for all the one-off uniques for the
Yeah.
next 3 weeks. And then I have on Trello, like I could talk about on my Monday list of just general housekeeping. One of the check boxes now is to is to plan the next week. So
Yeah.
I come in on Monday, we're down to 2 weeks out because we just dropped last week.
Oh,
And then I
wow.
add that third week every Monday. I just add the third week so that we're always 3 weeks out. That way I can always order materials that may or may not arrive in like a short time span.
So let me have you basically say all that again. So in Trello, you're setting up when you're doing your Monday work, right? And
Hmm.
you're doing your ordering and all this stuff.
To-do
You're
list,
setting
yeah.
up the following 2 weeks.
That's in that's in Google Sheets. So we have
Okay,
our
that's in Google Sheets.
yeah, we have a Google Sheet that's like our entire build list, all the custom orders with all the tabs for those, and then a tab that's we just call in stock
Yeah.
that has like columns with the next 3 weeks
The
planned
next
out.
3 weeks.
And
So,
so
yeah, so you're basically planning like 1 week every week. You're
yeah,
just planning that third week.
yep, exactly.
And in that, so you've got inside of that 2 week cycle, are you no, because I mean, if you're dealing with like heat treated blanks and stuff, I'm just trying to think of like what you're planning based on. So it's like right now, I've got heat treated ground Kihokus and scales made. Okay. So I would essentially be like putting those into my like, okay, next week, like this is the product that
Yeah.
I'm working on. See, that is where we are going as far as like need.
Hmm.
I've never been able to be that consistent around exactly what I'm working on,
Yeah.
but I
And
really need it.
I think what's helped me the most with it is that with the custom ordering, I think there's an innate issue with it, which is that it's 100% passive. In other words, I can't create any energy. It has to be created. Like I can post and stuff, but it's really, I'm just waiting for people to show up and like order a custom knife. And so there'll be huge weeks and bad weeks and huge months and bad months. And it's like, I didn't feel like I ever had any control. Whereas with this 3 weeks out, I at least have that little bit of forecasting of like, who knows, they may not all sell out, but I at least know that I'm forecasting this picture of this many knives and it's probably going to bring at least some demand every week. And it's like, it's offered me like mental security of like
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not just purely waiting for people to show up. Like I have some proactive element here.
So, okay, so we flip that, right? We know that we're going to do drops. So, but we're not waiting on anything.
Hmm.
But our process around drops is inconsistent. So, I think that's an area where we could really improve at this point. And you said forecasting, just that alone. Right now, I'm kind of trying to figure out a lot of times like what is enough? And
Hmm.
if I can figure out what is enough of one thing, that will help not get stuck in like a loop of just working on that thing at the exclusion of other projects once it's past its like maximum value.
Hmm.
These are like weird concepts and like for making, right? Like small scale makers, they're strange concepts because it's like you just make more because you need to make more money. But I think they're components of like basic business strategies that have more application to what we're doing than maybe it feels like at the outset,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And they're also, I think for a lot of people, like it's outside. Like I didn't learn this. I don't have a background in business. I don't have a background in marketing, and so like a lot of these things, like we are kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way, or do you feel
Yeah.
like you have again, you have like a little bit of a different experience around small scale production companies to also have like at some point internalized like, oh, this is their process, like this is how they're
Hmm.
releasing product, this is
Hmm.
working, not working.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is, well, like I said numerous times, is that you have to have a system that is turning over very quickly, like our weekly scheduling and the way we keep doing
Yeah,
things every week, because we're doing small batches because they're every
right.
week. So it's like if we go a direction and we're like, what about this Cerakote color? And it's like, holy cow, they didn't like that. We're only 7 days away from doing something totally different.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're doing months and months building batches of hundreds of knives and you have a wrong decision, you've got 3 to 6 months before that pivot takes effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh man, they didn't like the size of that knife. They didn't like the color. That
Yeah.
wasn't the right direction for the brand. And it's like with a weekly system, we're basically like real time feeling where the demand is. You know what I mean?
There's a Venn diagram in there somewhere of like efficiency. So you do bigger batches, right? Your prices go down kind of. Things get
Yeah.
more efficient.
Hmm.
Theoretically,
Hmm.
you're able to like batch the work. And when that batch is done, you have more product. On the flip side, you're like, okay, I can make one thing today.
Yeah.
Then I can make X amount of things in a week. The cost to do it that way, like over a time period, if you're doing things weekly, what does that look like? If you were to have a month release where you worked nonstop for a month versus releasing product every week, what is that margin? And like, where is the sweet spot and the value point? You probably are at a week.
I would say a week for us. Yeah. Just because everything we do is weekly. So if
Yeah.
anything that isn't weekly is like a friction point. Because, for
Yeah.
example, the LT5s, I machine them. I don't do them weekly because they're getting bevel ground. And so it's
Right.
like I can't just do it every week. It's got to be a bigger batch.
It's got to be
And so
bigger.
I've got to machine all the tanks for the batch and send them all to heat treat. And it's always every time that week comes up of like I've got to machine a big pile of those, and I don't have to do it again for 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's like I don't know what to do with that. It doesn't really fit. It's like distracting, and it's like I'd way rather do X amount of those every single week at a
Yeah.
given slot, and then I just don't have to think about it anymore. But like I said, we got to get bevel grinding in house in order to do that because we can't just like drip feed,
So
a vendor.
here's like, I guess maybe like a little bit of a thought exercise. Right now, you're adding. There's
Hmm.
nothing you're really like taking away, right? Or removing from your process. You're getting ready. You say maybe start working on a new model soon.
Yep, it's
Okay.
begun.
All right. So you're in process of a new model. How many models do you have in production right now?
We have a total of 5.
Five.
Yeah.
So at like how are you strategizing like time on those models when models swing back around, like, and at what point are you like, oh, now I have to kill this model because we have these models? Is that like in your thought process at all yet?
I haven't materialized a good strategy for
It's
that
hard,
yet.
right?
Yeah.
Because you start
No.
to like add. I struggle with that because we have so many small products.
Hmm.
It's like I can't actually do them the way that I'm doing every month, even just from a finishing standpoint. It's like we do our 50 sci pops for a drop every month. Then I usually do some like kind of customy stuff. Okay. Then we have polys. Then we have knives. Then we have apparel. Then we have design work. And I'm like, I'm really struggling with figuring out a process that allows all of those things to kind of move forward. And I don't know
Hmm.
if they all move forward simultaneously, or it's like you work in this section for X amount of time and then like fully switch, or like these three go together. These three are, a quarter of the year, and then you
Hmm.
switch. As you add, like there just starts to be, like you mentioned, sharpening, right?
Hmm.
Like there's a point where volume of output, one task can become like
Yeah.
a huge, not a, I don't want to say like a weak link because that doesn't feel accurate,
Yeah.
but it's a bottleneck,
Yeah. It just
right?
becomes,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
You bottleneck it.
Yep. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
for now, I feel good about just continuing on the path. I think it's one of those things. It's like a bridge we'll cross when we come to it. Maybe that's naive, but
I don't
um,
think so, the way that you're doing it, because you're actually moving pretty organically. And there, so far, there hasn't been something that completely upset the overall system.
yeah, it's been pretty smooth sailing. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. But the thing is, like, I'm gonna just say it right now, the new knife is going to be a relative, a sibling of the Lost Trail 5.
Sure.
So we developed and hammered out the formula for that knife,
Yep.
and we need to use that formula for more than one knife. And the
So
MagnaCut formula we used, across various models, and we want
it sounds like what you're saying is that I feel like there's a good way to say this.
Yeah, what is it?
The process is the product.
Seems like
So
it.
you're saying that you have a method to make a specific type of product, and that method is actually valuable and repeatable.
It seems like it.
Seems okay.
Yeah,
Just to clarify.
yeah. No, it
Okay.
does
So
seem that way.
you're in family stage. So you're not adding a random product to the line. You're adding a family member to a product line.
Yep, that's the plan.
So currently you have two family lines
Yeah.
because the LT5 at first was a standalone.
Hmm.
It was an outlier. It was a different
Yeah.
process, different thought process, manufacturing process, everything. Now you have two families. So that same question that I asked a few minutes ago, it's maybe more relevant now, which is
Mm,
how many family lines are there? How do you
yeah.
organize the families? How do the families take priority in production? Dude, this is the rabbit hole. And this might be like full ADHD response to this because I see the decision tree just like explode
Hmm.
in front of me.
It does.
But that's like a lot of data to track.
Yeah, in a weird way though, the two family lines, they don't really interact with each other in the shop.
No, it makes sense.
It's like they don't use the same, honestly, they don't even use like the same equipment. I mean, yeah, it's the same equipment, but it's like the way I did it is to kind of, we had all our bottlenecks with the MagnaCut knives, and we're really happy with those knives, but it has its specific bottlenecks. And
Yeah.
then we just sort of designed the LT5 to like fill in all the gaps where it's like we don't have bottlenecks here, here, and here. That knife is going to hit all those spots and not hit all the bottleneck spots. And so it fit in, and we didn't really have to change anything. Um, so
That's pretty amazing.
uh, so that was kind of the origin of the design, was like, it's, if you look at like our demand and supply is like a bar graph, it's like we're maxed out here, we have lots of capacity here, let's utilize all that capacity. And it worked, I mean, so far, because we just kind of added it, and it's just, we haven't really changed anything else other than having more space. That was going to be critical. I knew that we were going to run out of room.
Man, space is options. I actually I've talked about Days screen printing a little bit on here. He's a good friend and like is doing a lot of our print work here in Bend. He's super fun because he's definitely neurospicy and like super creative and excited. He's his business is growing super fast, and he's at the point where he's like looking at automation, and like
Mm,
it's really neat to see. But he's also collaborative. And so, he was over here yesterday and we are talking. He's like, yeah, there's a warehouse that's 14,000 square feet, like right next to me.
mm,
And it's like, man, this idea of like the dais slash like, like compound kind of thing where you have like a few creative businesses in like a space and a coffee shop is so attractive to me. And I think there is a way to like fully capitalize on a couple of small businesses being in the same location.
mm, mm.
It's just like it's not a now thing, but like as I'm starting to like look at like space needs, that idea of like,
Yeah.
man, it'd be sick. Like, yeah, our screen printer is next to our shop, is next to, you know,
Yeah.
what's the other shop? Like, I mean, the Deus formula is so good because they have like the retail shop, a motorcycle builder, and a coffee shop usually, or some type of like a surfboard shaper. It's so sick because
Yeah.
it's a place that you actually want to go spend time and then spend money.
Yeah, there's depth to it. It's not
Yeah.
just a cup of coffee or whatever. Yeah.
It's tricky at this point. Like some of the interests I think that start to like fall into place around what you're doing are at a point almost necessarily outside of the actual product line. and like what
Mm-hmm.
you manufacture. It's like that has nothing to do with what I'm actually making. But I see like potential to be like, oh yeah, if you like do small retail, but that retail is tied into your manufacturing space, and that, it's like tied into creating community. It's like, yeah, it's not a product. It doesn't fit into like a daily activity
Yeah.
necessarily, but it's like long-term valuable. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
Scaling.
Scaling.
Okay. My shop update is not as good as yours. We're still kind of in like post show limbo. So coming out of like Blade and PWNCI was pretty, or PNWCI was pretty tanked. My plan was to basically come back, start like a soft work schedule
Mm-hmm.
that allowed for some time to like just catch up on actual outside of work like interests and like
Mm-hmm.
sleep and all of these things. And it's like worked pretty well. I basically have kind of been doing a 50% work cycle. So get up at 4:30, kind of hit the shop around 5:30, work until noon,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm done. What's crazy is like that's not a halftime work schedule. And this is like showing, I think, where my headspace has been lately,
Yeah.
where it's like it's still like a 7-hour day. A lot of times I'm pushing it to an 8-hour day, and then I'm stopping and I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough. And
Yeah.
like, I'm like, oh man, what a slacker. Some of this stuff is like crazy because it just spirals,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You guys right now are more consistent, I think, with your hours, less manic.
We're pretty, honestly, extremely rigid about it. It's like to the minute. I mean, it's like, and it's not, I don't know. It's literally like exactly the minute the day starts, and then look at the clock. We're done. Go
We're
home
done.
every
Whistle
day,
blows.
every day. Which I don't know if
Have
that's
you?
good or bad, but
Oh, I think it's amazing. Have you? So you guys haven't run into a spot where you're like, oh, we got to work overtime.
um, I don't. So Dalton's worked with me for more than a year. I don't think we've ever
Yeah,
worked overtime, like not
dude.
even once.
I think that honestly, I think having the employee thing. Maddie was talking to me about it recently. She's like, when you have an employee, you're more organized in the shop because I
You're
can't like
forced
just
to.
like flit around and like
Yeah,
get distracted. I'm like, I think that's coming again.
yeah. No,
Trying to
it.
think when Joe Mangiafico was working with us, he just worked his hours, and a lot of times I would work the same hours, and
Yeah.
we would get a lot done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's easier to be structured when you have that. With ADHD, they call it body doubling, which I never realized around having an employee, but having someone else in the room with you while you're doing tasks is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah,
So like that's why like ADHD folks a lot of times like a study hall or like a coffee shop with like noise and all this stuff going on is actually super beneficial to being productive.
yeah. There's a settling effect.
Kind of a settling
Yeah,
effect. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, and it's like it's accountability partner too, kind of aspect. Because I mean, before Dalton was in the shop, my hours were a lot less regular. I wasn't pulling off that like exact schedule, not even close. And then I knew once he was coming in, like we have to have a start time and an end time, like it's how it works. And so
Yeah.
once we set that up, I was like, I'm sure that's when I'm going to work. You know what I
And
mean? So
have you felt any like restriction to yourself for that? Like have you felt like tethered or tied down? Is that, I don't know if that's a weird way to
because of the
ask.
time,
Yeah, the
no,
accountability, like how being dependent to another person, being accountable to their time. Have you felt any like frustration around that?
honestly, no.
Yeah,
No, it's been a release. It's been a huge
that makes sense.
weight off my
That
shoulders
makes
to
sense.
just to have accountability to something that the
Yeah,
decision's kind of out of my hands. Because if it's just me, and I wake up in the morning, every morning it's like, I could go to the bank first because I can
yeah,
get a cup of coffee on the way.
yeah,
Then I could go in the shop, but then you get back and you're like, well, the kids are playing and it looks like a lot of fun.
yeah,
And it's not even, I mean, you could call it laziness sometimes, but it's like some of it is just with zero accountability. There's opportunities to do fun things, and yeah,
right.
that's nice, but there's like a lot of time if you work an exact 10-hour day,
Yeah.
4 days a week. That leaves a lot of time that's totally free. And then you don't
Yeah.
have the conflict of like, okay, now when I play with my kids, I wonder if I should be working because, well, 5 o'clock was 30 minutes ago. So I don't need to worry about work. You know what I mean? So it's a release to do it, work hard and then just be free. Like I've never had that in my whole life. You know what I mean? I've always been basically always in some state of work on that sliding scale of like,
Yeah. That's like where I am.
yeah,
It's just work.
yeah,
And I'm trying to break free of that in certain areas. And to quote the Western craftsman poet Carrie Schwartz, is it important or just interesting? I think for a lot of us, I think we spend a lot of times in our businesses or on our crafts on things that are interesting, that are arguably, it's not that it's not important.
mhm.
I think a lot of times it doesn't serve a purpose or like the overall
The
the
goal is
overall goal.
the goal is interesting and important.
Yeah, and that's the
If
thing
it's
is
merely interesting,
everybody has a different version of what they need out of like this business. But what I'm seeing is like more and more, it's just business, like at scale. So if you are a, single shop knife maker, or you are a potter, or you are whatever it is that you're carpenter, whatever it is that you're making, I think the same questions and time
yeah,
usage and like interactions kind of come up.
yeah. Well, an example for me recently is like my wife's really into the Olympics.
Yeah.
I've always thought it was like pretty cool, but she's really into it. And so it's actually kind of got me more into it. And it's like, I've been thinking a lot about the Olympics, like during work. And it's
Hmm.
like, I want to, because it happens on the off schedule in Europe in the
Hmm.
morning, like I don't get to watch it live. So I'm like, what happened? And so in the morning, every once in a while, I'm like looking at my phone, looking at the Olympics and stuff. And I catch myself, I'm like, this is interesting, but not important.
But
You know
not
what I mean?
important right now. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where aligning interesting and important is like
Hmm.
where the magic happens.
Yep. Everything consistency over a long time horizon. That's a good segue. You and I were talking about marketing a little bit. Okay. Backstory on this, or like thought process. So like when I came in, forums, moves into social media, at a point where I worked those pretty hard. Never never someone who like was good at social media specifically, but like I put time into it, like
Hmm.
being consistent with posting. Fast forward to now, it's incredibly hard to actually be consistent with a post, right?
Same.
Or to have a reason behind it.
Hmm.
And so I've actually started kind of looking for some type of help around this. Um, you you are in a similar but different position, but like also thinking about like marketing maybe in a different way at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, people have to see what you're doing.
They have to see what you're doing
And
consistently.
I think what I have and what you have is like at least some degree of confidence that like we're excited about what we're doing. We want to share that excitement,
Yes.
but we live in a world where the mechanism for sharing is ever changing and it's
Yeah.
complicated and it's not really that simple. You know what I mean? So it's like how do you get our excitement to like reach more people?
Yeah.
And that is hard. Like I don't I'm not very good at that, but I've been using not using that's the wrong word, but like YouTubers and other influencers who are really good at that,
Right. That is their
who
job.
who I get along with and who like what I make have helped me a lot. And that's great. I love that. But also it's another circle back to where it's like I don't have my own footprint. It's really
Yeah.
I've been benefiting from a lot of help, but it's like what am I going to do for myself? You know what I mean? How am I going to
It's
protect
like the
my
Ben Peterson question, like who
yeah.
owns the land?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not that it's a problem that you're working with someone else who owns that land. It's
Hmm.
that you don't have something that is completely self-controlled.
Exactly. Yeah. There has to be like something in the bank, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something that we
And
can
I mean, you're doing it. You're pretty consistent with your videos, or at least you are in phases when you're working on things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's part of the problem. So when I'm working on something that's super interesting, I'm okay with taking a picture of it or like a video and talking about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, a lot of times when I'm working on something interesting, I'm interested in it. And filming a video or like doing a post about it kind of breaks that flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been trying to figure out like, okay, what does it look like to be able to release? What does it require? And it's like, I think it's like removing small pain points. So for me to do content on my own consistently, the fact that I listen to audio on my phone
Mm-hmm.
and film audio on my phone is actually enough of a pain point that it slows down the process. So Tom Medovich, Notorious EDC, was like, dude, buy a second phone as a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You like look and you're like, it's $1,000 camera that directly connects to everywhere that I need to post that footage. And it's completely offline. I don't have to like take my phone out of my pocket, put it on a tripod. It's like I have a
Yeah.
phone. Okay. That's where my
That's
head has
smart.
been out of like these small changes.
Yeah.
But the realization of having someone else in the shop to do content, I think has been really attractive.
I've been thinking about that too. Yeah.
I just don't know exactly
That person is tough though.
the
That
person is
it's a
tough.
special person.
It's a special person. Or it's a someone who is good at that thing who is paid well for that thing.
Mm-hmm.
The tricky part for right now is like we sell the products that are in demand already. So, and we don't have a lot of product that is just available in general.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point of marketing if you don't have a tangible product that someone can go and buy? And that is, I think for us, I see a few different areas, and it's like, it's the linking assets thing, right? So if I post more content, my visibility goes up. If my visibility goes up, that's like usable to CRKT
Mm-hmm.
or Boker or you, right? Whatever it is, if we're like doing this and then I'm talking about the turn. Okay, and that video is getting posted. It's just consistency. Like I look at it
Yeah.
and I'm like, there's something there. I don't know what I don't know. And
Well,
I've
and
never paid for help or marketing.
I think you're a testament to the fact that like just like you can put money in the bank, you can put demand in the
Yeah.
bank a little bit
Yeah.
because it's like if you are designing your business in a way that you're trying to get everything you can out of your demand,
Yeah.
then any stumble in your demand and you're suddenly
Right.
overextended. Whereas if you're banking demand
Yeah.
beyond what
Backup
you can,
demand,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And
Demand in reserve.
you can't have too much demand, really. Like, there's
There's
frustrations
a,
that come
again,
from
Venn
it, but
diagram there. There's a point where the demand is like, people are like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't get anything. I walk
yeah.
away. We know we lose people every once in a while because they're so frustrated that they
Hmm.
haven't like gotten lucky on like a website drop or
Yeah.
picked in a lottery. And it's like, I get it. You just get bored. You're like, I haven't got the thing and it's been 6 months. That is never my intention. I'm trying to satisfy as many like people as I can.
Hmm.
But the reality of small batch manufacturing is like that is not always possible.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It's again like thought exercise. I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, if we had a meeting yesterday and the strategy seems pretty good and it's interesting to me, but the trick is like, how do we monetize it or at least offset the cost of it
Hmm.
with something that is not time intensive in the shop? Because the goal is not to like increase efficiency in one area by like having to spend much more time in another area. Like
Hmm.
that's counter, productive.
Yeah. 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 I think that's one thing that I've considered a little bit too is fleshing out our website with something that large volumes can be summoned up that can just be there. And that's where I've thought about the comb again.
Yeah.
Because it's like we could scale that like crazy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We could it'd take a lot of demand before we couldn't satisfy it with that.
Right.
So
And the cool thing is like if you can add that back in, it's one, it's like a little bit of history of the brand, which I really like. I actually think at this point it might kind of spur like a little product line tied to that because I think
yeah.
once you have one, I think you'd look at that thing and be like, well, we got this back and it's really cool, but like it's just a standalone.
Hmm.
I think you would build that out as a family, right? Now you have something that's a lower price point, semi easy to produce, and it's like you can decide when you want to do them. Like, dude, if you release those before Christmas,
Hmm.
like that's something that people can go and get. It's cool. It's limited. It's a special release version. Like you have a
Still made in
laser now. You
house.
didn't have that. You can do cool logo stuff on those combs, like whatever, you know. You can do
Yeah.
initials on them, like do little monogram on the tip of the comb for someone at Christmas time. Like that's sick.
Hmm.
You know, that so that's what I mean. It's like figuring out those points where you're like, okay, this increases this visibility, this increases demand. I don't just want that to be selling LT5s. I want this demand to actually sell
Yeah.
this product.
Also, buy advertising for that
Yes,
because it's not a knife.
that's the other point. So that's the fun where I have to kind of like incentivize myself to do things not because it's a good decision, but because it's an interesting decision usually. Um, which is unfortunate, but like I guess I'm okay with it too. But that's the interesting part is I'm like, I don't want to show knives. It's like, so if we're gonna film content, like what are we filming?
Yeah.
And how do I lead that? It's like, how do I use content to grow my mailing list? How do I use my content to ripple into brands that I collaborate with and like increase my
Mm.
general standing? So if we look, it's like looking at me as a product, basically. So if I'm a product, there's a different focus than just putting product that's for sale out. Right.
Hmm.
And like I think at this point, like we all are part of our product line. It's
Yeah.
really easy in the custom
Absolutely.
side. I've always said you buy the maker as much as that you buy the product.
Yeah.
Your scale, you are still very front facing. You're in the videos, you're doing the thing. You've mentioned like Pearson pallets,
Jay
or
Pearson. Oh yeah.
yeah, Jay Pearson, like even at his scale, he's still in the front.
John Saunders.
Yeah, John Saunders is there
Yeah.
too, right? They're on video, their people know them.
Yeah.
Uh there's a huge amount of value in that. Probably much bigger than that, and it starts to go the other way, right?
Hmm.
But I think for where we're at, we have to look at ourselves as like a viable component of our product line.
And that's I thought a lot about when I started to expand this kind of manufacturing. It crossed my mind numerous times of do I start a knife brand with a different name as opposed to Schwartz
Yeah, yeah,
knives?
yeah.
I thought about that a lot, and I eventually decided for the reason that you just described not to do that,
Yeah.
not to like isolate it from what I've done before and kind of
Yeah.
who I am, and there's definitely cons to that, but
Well, and that might be like a yes, but later.
hmm.
It might not make sense now. It might make sense down the line. Like you and I have joked around like a few different knife brands for fun that could be like a side project that isn't directly tied to us.
Hmm.
And that's actually at a point you're like, oh, that's really fun.
Hmm.
It's a fun way to look at business. And I think it gives you the idea of not anonymity, but like once you build to a point and people expect something of you, it can be hard to just like throw a wild card into your production line.
Hmm.
I think I could get away with it a little bit more than not that you couldn't. I just think it's more expected,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know. Uh Here's a random one. So we did B-side. We talked about that a little bit on the last show. Um I look at apparel as like a clothing brand, right? And I look at clothing brand like I really like streetwear. Um from a style standpoint, why do you think that in the knife industry like apparel and fashion hasn't played a bigger part? And I got to back up to this question, but like just for your response now.
I think it depends a lot on where at in the knife industry, because I think in large swaths of the knife industry there is an apparel that's associated with that, but it's not coming from the knife brands, which is I think what you're asking, right? It's like you see 511
It's like a
Tactical
yeah,
doesn't.
it's like a
Yeah,
yes and. So
yeah.
functional clothing or just like you're just clothes,
Hmm.
right? But there's pockets where you'll see like uh good art is a great example. So like if you're in the EDC community or knife community and you're also like a good art collector, there's like a very real chance that you're also interested in things that parallel. So it might be like, Ironheart's denim, or like, maybe you like Ship John. Just overarching. I've been interested in this for so long. And like I think doing the B side where we released things that were priced closer to fashion,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like a distressed baseball cap that's pre-distressed. Like that, I think I was like, wow, that, and like the first things to sell. And I realized I'm like, maybe it's just a visibility thing. Like maybe brands aren't bringing in apparel and concepts that track as opposed to like only focusing on like the main product lines.
Uh, here's an observation I want to run by you and tell me if you think this is true. I think with the way you have built your business is kind of akin to like vertical integration, which is
Okay.
like you take a certain demographic,
Yeah.
a certain type of customer, and
Yeah.
you go knives, clothing, bottle openers,
Uh,
slingshots, and you're kind of vertically stacking on like what is sort of admittedly like a certain type of niche of certain
right.
type of people
Right.
versus other companies trying to like horizontally where it's like we want to have a knife for everybody
Right.
as opposed to having a somebody and then having a knife, a shirt, a hat, a side pop for that somebody. Does that make sense?
It
And so
does.
it depends on, because if you are one of those companies that you're like, I want to have a knife for everybody,
Right.
I would kind of put CRKT into that category
Okay.
of like they have to walk like almost an agnostic line on like culture. And
Right.
I'm not talking about politics. I'm just
No, no,
I'm
no. Yeah, totally.
yeah. And so it's like what format is the company? Whereas like you see some companies where like, no, we have Navy SEALs that help us design our knives.
Right.
We make combat knives. We like selling
Right.
to ex-military police. And so then we're going to start adding like CQD tools, extraction tools.
Right.
We may do like some
You're
Molly
adding
stuff.
to that bait. Right, right, right.
You know what I
So,
mean?
and in that thought process, if they release a piece of clothing, 9 times out of 10, it would be something that follows suit inside of the overarching thought process.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
They're extremely thematic. Like you have an extremely thematic brand,
Interesting.
whereas some like you look at Benchmade, like even you look at
Right.
their site, they kind of have multiple stacks because they have like
Yeah.
the hunting thematic. They
Right.
have like the outdoorsy non-hunting
Right.
where that's like that you can tell there's a conscious decision to separate those
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's like, obvious reasons. And then they have like the aquatic series and stuff, and they're trying to look at like the saltwater world and fishing, and so they're such a big company that they have multiple stacks, but you have to be a big enough company to have that many stacks because I mean you have to have
Right.
people in every stack that know that
that
group.
under that are actually
Yeah,
authentic to that
yeah,
stack. You know, it's funny. Something you just said is like a huge testament to Benchmade because there's two types of customer in the outdoor world. Like one is
hmm.
Bass Pro, one is REI,
And they're both.
but Benchmade's in both.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that is actually like a pretty huge testament because like you said, if you're, a through hiker or something, like you hunting might not be the thing,
Yeah,
whatever it is that is like just your shift. You're not interested in
yeah,
firearms. You're not interested in hunting. You just want lightweight gear.
yeah.
you're very you could there could never be crossover.
Yeah.
But that as a crossover brand, and that is something like always talked about that. I'm like being able to step out of your immediate niche or your immediate industry, I think is like a huge asset,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like you can build a brand outside or um, what would it be like tangential
Yeah. Yeah.
to, right? An industry. This it kind of brings up another thought too. I was just about to mention Montana Knife Co. again. I notice a theme with us where you and I both have names that get dropped on a pretty regular basis, right? If we are mentioning a name multiple times, it's probably because we are very impressed
Yeah.
with what that like human or organization is doing. And if you guys are listening, like, and you're hearing us drop names, like, go like spend a little time like checking that out because
Yeah.
it's something that is sticky.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, Yeah, I don't know. I noticed it with you recently. You said something. And I was like, oh, that's like a name that I haven't dropped, but you comes up for you. It's like I notice like I talk about like Chris Reeve a lot. We
Yeah.
bring up the companies that we work with. I mean, like some of it is just like right in the front of your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've mentioned Jens a bunch of times, or like, Medovich, like Notorious CDC. It's like because I see him, I see the way he does like content and media, and I'm super impressed by it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
And
know?
I guess to circle back, because you asked like, why aren't brands doing that? And it's
Yeah.
like, I think that there's a risk if you're vertically integrated like you, there's not very
Yeah.
much risk because you know who those people are.
Yeah.
But if you're like a Benchmade, I suspect they have to think about that pretty hard
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
if they have multiple stacks and they seem partial or they can damage their ability to transit across those
Yeah.
stacks if they do things that are not agnostic enough in regard to like clothing because it's like we
Right.
just talked about the Bass Pro and
Yeah.
the REI like
Yeah.
they could alienate if they started to build one of those stacks, you know what I mean? So it's almost better to stick to knives to avoid that.
So here, okay. And at that scale, that's like an easy one, right? Well, it's
Yeah.
like we're not a clothing company, we're a knife company. That's
Yeah.
all easy. I
Hmm.
think this, and that's why this is kind of like a difficult, muddy question, is because it would be really easy to be like, yeah, but I make knives, I don't make clothes. It's a general, it's like, yes, there are a couple brands in the knife industry that you will see, right? I always notice now when I see something that's like, oh, like I see a certain section of like the collector base that actually is into Supreme.
Hmm.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
There's more people that are probably like sneakerheads
Hmm.
than you realize because people aren't always just staring at everyone's feet. Um, like it's just
You're
it's a feeling, right?
you're aligned with streetwear.
Sure,
You're
like
aligned
in a
your
way,
brand.
or
Yeah.
I'm adjacent in that I'm interested in it. I'm not
Yeah.
like people that are into streetwear are not necessarily into my brand, but like I look at it and I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
What it,
to your thought about the stacks. So I've actually I've actually intentionally tried to do something different, which like the easiest, this is like the 5 panel like outdoor cap, right? Versus like your standard trucker. In general, they're two different people.
mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, like we've got that. And I remember seeing it Kentucky years ago. I remember seeing like dude in one of like an acid washed like 5 panel hat next to one of our like blue and white, like standard kind of like hayseed trucker hats, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The their clothing followed suit. They they bought that hat because it fit like their aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
But when you looked, you're like, oh, they're both wearing Burnley.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
an instant conversation
Powerful.
starter.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, the next one that I really want to push into is like unstructured dad caps because like I look and I'm like, man, we have a lot of people that just they're golfers. And that to me doesn't feel inauthentic to the brand because the
Mm-hmm.
brand base is community. So if I can have, you know, like a gutter punk on one side rocking Burnley and then a dude who's about ready to, hit the links and they
Yeah.
talk,
Yeah.
dude, that's
That's
amazing.
yeah, and yeah, that is a good point. I like that.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I've been like feeling it more lately because as I've done like doing the Good Art project, like been in their group, and I just kind of like see different like collectors. I'm like, oh yeah, that like whole group, like they have like a different aesthetic. And it's just interesting. Like I would say like a lot of the knife industry, there's a point where it's just like the like clothing and apparel is nondescript,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like it's tactical gear. Like we always joke around. It's like, oh, you go to a knife show, find the dude with the beard and the backpack and the cargo shorts.
Hmm.
It's, you know what I mean? Because you're gonna like it's
Yeah.
basically just like a C.
Yep. Totally. No, it's interesting. I'm gonna have to think a lot more about that because
And as you start to do merch too, it's
yeah.
like because you will. It's like I think it's a fun exercise to kind of like look at like, are you doing what's the purpose of the merch? What does it say? What does it do? How does it make people feel? Like I think that there's a few tropes inside of the industry I think that can affect the I think like the success or like long-term vibe around products. In EDC tools, if you are a brand and you kind of like view that stuff as like knickknack, I think that that makes it much harder for you to actually produce a product that people find interesting
Hmm.
because the internal organization is not like taking it seriously. I think merch has a similar vibe where it's like if you're just doing it to give away for free, like that has value. But if you're looking at it as something that is like a quality product that is interesting to people, like you have to view it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really thought provoking.
That's not that total tangent.
Yeah. No, I like it though. We said we were going to talk about marketing, and I, I don't know if it was exactly online, but it basically what that means.
Yeah, I think that's like marketing with like a huge tangent.
Yeah.
Um
Practical application.
let's stay on like marketing for a little while because like so I've never done paid marketing, but yeah, man, I just can't figure it out. I don't know what I don't know.
Hmm.
I assume there is a way to increase. We're in this area where actually marketing the products that we're doing is tricky. Ways around that I think are really interesting. Like we saw Benchmade go pretty hard into kitchen.
Hmm.
And I mean, it makes sense because like for at least a while you could post, advertisements for kitchen knives on Facebook.
Hmm.
I don't know that that's even the case anymore.
No.
Montana Knife Co., their ads are everywhere. So if we're getting flagged for knife content, how are their ads being placed by companies? And how are those companies not getting flagged?
The only thing is, it seems like a lot of those ads, I'm not certain if it's all of them. It seems like a lot of them, they don't show the blade. They'll put
That's the
it,
key, right?
it'll be
Yeah.
in a sheath, which is, I'm sorry, but that's so stupid.
It's ridiculous, but
But
these are not like human controlled decisions, I
hmm.
don't think, right? It's not a rationale based decision.
Yeah.
It's an overarching. And I keep seeing like petitions and stuff for like to send to Instagram or like send to Meta. And I like not to sound like negative, which I don't actually think it is, but like I don't think they care.
Hmm.
I don't think that is going to move the needle.
Yeah.
In a way, I'm like, oh, it might bring more attention to something where they're like, oh, like, these guys keep complaining. I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna like just shut this down. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But like I think I look at it and my question is the same as yours. It's like, how do I post this without a blade? Like, is my goal to just show a picture of a knife? No.
I just wish they had, if they could just do this, if they could do like 5 bullet points of
Yeah.
like, this is what you can and can't do, because
Doesn't
they just say
I know.
weapons. That's all it
Yeah.
says. And
And that is
it's like, I don't know what you mean.
right. Well, that's the idea that like all knives are weapons, and it's like incorrect. Like anything
Yeah.
is a weapon. A ballpoint
Yeah.
pen is a weapon.
Yeah.
Um, it's like the spirit in which it's intended.
Yeah. Which that's where if they could distill that or something. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't,
Yeah.
it's strange. But
Well, and that's again, so back to the kitchen thing. It's like, is it the image? I don't think the image, like if there's image recognition, it's not telling what a kitchen knife is. So is it
yeah,
in the copy? Is it in the hashtags? Is it, and
yeah.
I'm sure like this has been like researched ad nauseum by somebody and they know much more. I
Hmm.
just, I don't know. I think at this point, like I'm seeing a lot of people really upset and I get it, but I think that this is a time where you have to kind of figure out how to adapt because like
Hmm.
these aren't our platforms. And the problem is like if we go like you go back to forums, you'll get a small amount and like there is still a section that exists in forums. It's just that it's not the main road. Facebook, Instagram, I mean TikTok, these are where people are organically going to like congregate online. I think there's more benefit in figuring out how to interact on those platforms than there is in like figuring out a different platform
Hmm.
or and I'm sure that's gonna like make someone super angry.
You know what's weird though is my account on Instagram is called Knife Designer.
Yeah,
All I post are pictures of knives. I think I put hashtag knife on every post.
yeah.
I've never had a post taken down ever.
So I was in the exact same boat. Like I have a verified account. I don't even post like knife hashtags. And I had two that were flagged. One of them was the donut media post. And it's like it's a bright yellow knife, like with a car, or like a
Was
buggy.
it
It's
a
like
collaborative post?
might have been a collaborative post.
So, my friend Dave, who Svarte, who's
Yep.
awesome. He's one of
Yep.
those German guys currently living in Spain, but
Yep.
he took a photo of an Overland Sport and he posted it, invited me to collaborate. I accepted. Upon me accepting it, it got flagged. That's the only post I remember ever having flagged, and it was happened immediately after I accepted the collaboration.
That's
I wonder if
interesting.
there's a correlation to collaborative posts, but that's weird. But
It's
like,
like it doesn't seem like something, but who knows?
yeah,
And you've gone in and looked at your like account status and stuff because I
yeah,
didn't even realize that I had like recently I didn't realize that I had two posts that were basically making it to where my account couldn't be recommended to non-followers.
I need to double check that. I guess I
Go
don't.
check it. Go
Yeah,
check your
yeah,
account
make sure.
status.
Yeah.
Um, you can appeal it,
Mm-hmm.
but then it just gets caught again. It's super strange. And this is like I'm trying very hard to just kind of like, play by the rules that are there. Use it as kind of an exercise to figure out like less direct. Like I've spent enough time shooting still images of knives at like, a 45-degree angle to feel like that's probably not the best way to do it anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but it is interesting. Like, I mean, I think that is a great example of the industry changing, um, and the expectations and demands around being a maker increasing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky one.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we had talked about like Blade, you see all the like there's more micro brands now, right? There's more super talented like product photographer slash content creators now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
It's nuts. It used to be like a few people post great photos on, of knives. And now it's like you look and you're like, that's a big field,
Yeah, yeah. It's very
right?
cool. I love seeing it.
I do too, man. But it's figuring out like as someone who that's not their main flow, how to stay relevant in that, I think it's pretty
I
tricky.
I just gotta remember. I gotta apologize to Dave. He lives. I believe it's actually Portugal, not
Portugal.
Spain.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say
yeah,
Portugal, yeah. At
yeah, yeah. Sorry, buddy.
least you
Anyway,
remembered. Anyway,
tangent.
I like Dave.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
That's like as a group, collectively, we at shows like there's a group of Germans that come. They are all
Hmm.
delightful people.
They are.
Some of my favorite people to
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah. It's a great time.
You and I'll need to like figure out we got to figure out a trip over there at some point. I think it would be, I was talking to them about that show Knife, which is in Solingen. You've never been to Solingen before. That's like, you know, kind of a little bit of a cradle of knife culture
I'd
and
love it.
history. That you would love it.
I would.
That might
That
be a
sounds
fun one.
great. On
Okay.
that note, man,
Yeah. Should we wrap it?
I think so. It was a,
Okay.
it was a good, fun conversation. It's got my gears turning. So usually when my gears really start turning, I'm like, we should probably stop because
I
I
know.
want to I want to like harvest this information and like dwell
Yeah.
on it for a little while.
Yeah. And that's when our conversations also like spiral because it,
Yeah.
again, the decision tree opens up and you're like,
Yeah.
you start to link all of these questions.
Hmm.
But yeah, fun stuff. Thank you guys for listening. To those of you who are supporting us on Patreon, we appreciate you. Uh, like the show, share it with a friend, leave us a review. Let us know what we can do better for you guys.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys. Peace.
Peace.